Hi everyone, I'm Andy, aka Googleman, and this is my guide to using quizzes in Google Classroom.
Look, up in the sky, it's a bird.
It's a plane!
Googleman? And our survey says... Hi, and welcome back to aka Googleman. Before we begin, I just want to say two quick things. First of all, this video is coming out on GCSE Results Day, so I just want to say congratulations and well done to every Year 11 student out there that has got their results today, and I really hope that they have got you where you need to go. The second thing is, if you are new to this channel or if you've seen the other couple of videos and you haven't yet subscribed, please hit the subscribe and notification bell buttons below to make sure that you get told of all of my new videos as they appear. Okay, so quizzes in Google Classroom. Now, I've used these quite a few times, even before we went into lockdown, and they are incredibly useful. And given how things are going to be in September, I, for one, will certainly want to be reducing the amount of paper marking that comes from my classes, particularly when I want to just check some knowledge, whether it's Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, Key Stage 5, it doesn't matter. So, Google Classroom quizzes, in fact Google Form quizzes, because actually they get generated from Google Forms, which is another app within G Suite, but it's integrated perfectly well with Google Classroom, are a really good way of getting that information about your students' knowledge and where they are with their learning. Now, you can set things up so you can have long answers and things like that, and I will show you some of those later on, but the key thing to help reduce workload in particular for me will be the use of just simple multiple choice quizzes that are self-marking, so they can get immediate feedback from that if you don't want to set it up that way as well. You can just review that as a teacher afterwards and you've got an immediate evidence base as to what's going on. And if you want to maybe go about inspiring some higher order thinking skills, you can use a different style of question and give them a set of multiple choice answers where they have to do a certain amount of working out in order to get the correct one. There is no kind of guesswork or just simple recall. Okay, thinking particularly perhaps of, say, maths teachers, you might want them to work on particular problems in order to get a correct answer. That actually is quite a complex thing for them to go through, and this is a really good way of them doing that, and for them to get some feedback and for you to see straight away whether they're perhaps using the right method. What I'm going to now show you is just how to create a quiz really quickly within Google Classroom. So the first thing you do is you go to your classwork tab in whatever class you're in and click on create, same as you would do before. The difference here is that instead of going just to assignment, you go to quiz assignment. What that does is it generates an assignment page the same as any other, but it has the addition of this blank quiz in there as well. It's attached automatically and saved that quiz to your Google Drive ready to use. I'm just going to start by giving this a name. Should probably put a space in there. Let's at least pretend like I can type in English. And then from there, I will go into that blank quiz. So here we have a blank screen, a blank quiz ready for us to use. Okay, the idea is quite simple. Right now I'm going to stick with multiple choice, but if I just give you this drop down menu, you can see there are lots of different types of questions available to you. You've got short answer questions if you just want a couple of words. These are also quite good if you want self-marking ones as well. Paragraphs aren't really good for self-marking, but are quite handy perhaps if you want an easy way to take in an essay. Checkboxes work in a similar way to multiple choice, so you could use that if you want to. Same with a multiple choice and tick box grid. You can actually use those quite easily as well. But today I'm sticking with multiple choice. So I'm just going to just start going through and start creating things in here to go into this quiz. I start off with something completely blank. So I need to make sure I rename everything as I go. You can add a description into the form if you need to, if there are particular instructions. Perhaps if you know you're going to want them to give their workings out into you or something like that, you could say that here. You are given an untitled question to start with, so you can go straight in and start asking things. I'm not going to ask anything particularly big in here. Just what is your name? And you could be Sir Lancelot. You could be Sir Robin, or you could indeed be King Arthur. Now, what you can also do with any of these questions is set up an answer key. This is a brilliant thing to do, in my opinion, particularly with multiple choices, because this is the thing that makes it mark itself. So if you click into the answer key, you now select what would be the correct answer. Okay, so when students then do this quiz themselves, it takes that and compares what they type in there. You can even give it a point value if you like. I'm going to give this a point value of 1. I'm going to click on done. And I'm also going to click here on the required tab as well, because what that does, it means that the students can't submit their form until they've answered this question. Okay, really, really key. Obviously, in the future, when it comes to real exams, they don't have that safety net, but it's good to give it to them now while they're getting used to it. I now want to add another question. I'm going to click on just the add question button here, and what it does is it defaults to a multiple choice again, because that's what I have done. I could keep adding question. I can keep adding things into here quite easily, and I can keep going to as many questions as I would like. And as long as I click on required to make sure they have to answer it and set an answer key if I want it marked for me, then I am well away, and I can then send that to students. Of course, if you were just doing this in Google Forms, you would have to click on send up in the top here, and then you can email that to people. You can send the link or embed that into another website if you would like to. In fact, the form that I use on the AKA Googleman website has an embedded form in there. It's really, really easy to do. However, I don't need to do that in that case. So if I just come over here, if I just close this here tab, come back to my original, this quiz, although the name hasn't actually changed here, if I were to refresh this page, it would do. I can then assign that with a due date if I wanted to. Let's set a date just for tomorrow. It's only a short quiz. It shouldn't take them long. And then click on assign. That is now set up in the same way as any other assignment, but instead of having perhaps themselves to hand in a document, they have got a quiz ready to answer as soon as they can see it. And you can see there that the assignment, the bridge, is there on the classwork list, ready for students to see. So the question now is, how did they do and how do you know? So we already know that we've set up a quiz that marks itself, and we are able to see those responses really, really easily. Now, you've got a couple of options. My personal one is to go in through Google Drive, which is what I'm doing here. You can see my Google Drive on screen. Once you've got Classroom, you should have a folder called Classroom in your main My Drive area, and this gives you access to all of your classes. So to find the quiz that you've done, if you go into Classroom, you've got your list of classes here. Obviously, you can see I have 2 as examples. You go into 1, and then you have any set assignments where you have templates in, where you've given them work to do there. And you also have the quiz that was put out earlier on. So if I now open that, I can see it loads everything up. I can see on here that I have 4 responses to this quiz. I click into that responses tab and I get a range of information. So I have a summary tab that comes up straight away, and this gives me just overall insights into how things were, breaks it down question by question, how many people answered which type of question, how many got it right, how many got it wrong. You can then break that down into individual questions. You can see the performance of individual questions on the screen there. Really, really handy. And I think most importantly, for me personally, you can see the individual responses. So you can check not only what the overall weaknesses of the class are by looking at the summary and the question responses, but you can also see an individual student's weaknesses as well by checking out this part of the screen. It's an excellent tool. If this is something that you wanted to put into a larger context, you want to take this data somewhere else, you can actually send this to a spreadsheet. So you can have create spreadsheet. Just here, you click on there. It defaults at create a new spreadsheet, the bridge responses. Or if you've got a spreadsheet open that's empty, you wanted to use that, you can. You can select that there. I'm going to go with the one that's been set to create for me. Click on create. It creates it, links it together, and then takes you to this spreadsheet where it lists all of the answers that are there. Now, depending on how you've set up your particular quiz, you might have asked them to put in real names. You might have asked them, if you're in a school, the domain might automatically collect those things for you, and that's absolutely fine. Okay, here, obviously I haven't got that on here, but what it does tell me, again, is I can see what all the answers were. I can see what the scores were for each student in that list as well. So if you've got the names on there, you'll have that as well. And then you can treat that like any other spreadsheet. You can filter things, you can remove things, you can put in different formulas that might help you work with that data in different ways. Really simple, really powerful, but something that, when we talk in a moment, gets in the way. Okay, now in my last video, I talked about Google Classroom and my top 5 things that I think that you should be trying out in September. And one of those was to reuse assignments that you've used with other classes for whatever purpose, whether it's because they're doing the same work or whether you're on a rotation and you just want to not keep writing the same assignment. And you can do that with the quizzes in Google Classroom, but the problem with that is if you look at how you look at those results, you could end up with this big muddle of things going on. So I'm just going to show you a couple of options that you can do to help you out, particularly if you've got the same quiz going to several groups at the same time. And actually within that is also a way where you can reuse questions to perhaps make something a bit more bespoke, and I'll mention that a little bit later on. So let's just go back and look at how we can reuse quizzes without making things too complicated for us to look at the results. In we go. Okay, so for this one here, I am just back into my Google Drive, and what I'm going to be looking at here are the different ways that you can set this for multiple classes. The first option is very simply just to create a copy of the quiz. Because of this spreadsheet that we created earlier on, if I set this same version of the quiz for different classes, all of those responses would end up in that same spreadsheet. Now, if you're doing this in different weeks with different classes, you can actually change and create a new spreadsheet for each class. But obviously, you're not going to do that all of the time. So this first way will just kind of like limit that straight away. It's really simple to do. If you just right click on the quiz, you don't even have to open it for this. You can do it from within the actual quiz itself. But come into here and just click on make a copy. What that literally does, it creates a carbon copy of that quiz. Same questions, same answers, but it's not linked to the same spreadsheet. What you then do is, if you go then to your Google Classroom, you set an assignment and you would add a document for those students to look at. The document you'll add this time is that quiz. So instead of it being added in for you by clicking on quiz assignment, you put it in there yourself, and it's treated in exactly the same way as if the quiz was created by Google Classroom. Okay, so that's option number 1 for sharing this with multiple classes. Okay, so before I show you this next one, option number 2 is a really useful way of creating a quiz that perhaps is a little bit more bespoke for the group that you're setting it for. And I think this is going to be really, really useful for any teacher that teaches multiple classes in the same year group, because as we all know, no student, no class are exactly the same, and it is quite likely they will get to slightly different points, particularly if this is just kind of a brief knowledge check quiz for a homework, or even for use in a classroom if you happen to be working in an IT suite. Okay, and this is going to be a way for you to only set the questions that you feel it's going to be beneficial to set out of the ones that you've used with other classes, because one class you might want to ask them all because you've covered everything. There's going to be another class where you just want to ask them a few of those. 1, because it's reflective of what they've actually learned, and 2, it doesn't disengage them by making them discouraged by the fact they don't necessarily know everything that's in there. So let's have a look at that option. Okay, so this time what I'm looking at is a way to make that slightly more bespoke quiz. So I've come back in, I've created a new quiz assignment, I have a blank quiz ready to go. But what I want to do is to be able to pick just a couple of those questions, because I don't think everyone knows all the answers yet. It's not been covered in the lesson. So let's look at that. It's really quick and really easy. In the same way, I will go into that blank quiz. And what this gives me is exactly the same thing that I had before. The difference here is I'm going to take a different step. Over here, I'm going to click on Import Questions. From there, I get this pop-up and I get a list of all the forms that I've created. Now, of course, just over here, I've got one here that has all the questions in. I will click on that quiz and click on select. What that then does is it brings up the 3 questions on this side of the screen. Now I could reselect all of those, but I'm only going to select the first 2. I will then click import questions and it puts those into this blank quiz. Okay. The only issue is what it doesn't do is take away the question that's automatically generated in there, but quite quickly I just click on that question and click on delete and it gets rid of that blank question for me. Okay, I can then go in, the answer key is already set for there as well. It's literally carbon copied the questions I've done before. And if you've got a larger scale quiz, okay, or a larger scale test that you want to give them, and you only want to take, say, 1 or 2 questions out of, say, 10, 15 or 20, this will make this really easy and bespoke. And again, you can create a spreadsheet to see those responses individually for this quiz, or look at the responses in that tab at the top. And that's it. That's my relatively quick guide to using quizzes in Google Classroom and seeing those results. Now, of course, there's lots of different things that you can do with that data when you get it, and you should, of course, be using it to plan for your next lesson. Anyone that's ever read Mark, Plan, Teach by Ross Morrison McGill will agree with me. Next Monday we'll be going into brand new ground again, as it is new videos on Monday, so make sure you tune into that and make sure you've hit subscribe and notify below so you get those videos notified to you when they appear. Until then, stay safe, stay well. I'll see you all on Monday. Googleman out.